Welcome to LC Podcast number 56. Today our cast is Evan down in this bottom corner, Matt over in the far corner, Jack right beside me, and then Erik on the far side of me, all the way over there. And today we are going to be talking about, right off the get-go, the Fallout show that's coming out.
Oh yeah!
Whoa!
Yeah, so
I made a super passive-aggressive tweet about that, being like, "Why don't you focus on proper game development rather than putting your resources in other places?"
No, they partnered with Netflix on this one. So Netflix is actually producing.
It's Amazon.
Oh, sorry, it's Amazon. They partnered with Amazon. Amazon's putting the production together. So it should be interesting. I mean, the fact that they don't have as much like insight into it might make it a pretty decent show. I know Amazon Prime has been trying to like pull people to their service because I mean, it's really hard to take on a well-established streaming giant like Netflix right now, right? I mean,
playing it as well.
Yeah, so I'm excited for it. I'm skeptical, but I'm optimistic. So I'm not going to.
Bethesda's not developing it, so
I'm not going to go into it.
Track record so far.
Sorry?
Shows. Like Amazon has a good track record so far for making shows. Like the one that comes off the top of my head, like The Boys. That show was actually like great. Loved it. And then there's also a lot like Good Omens. I hear was good. There's another. I think the Jack Ryan series that they do. That's good. I hear. So like. They're producing, like, all these streaming services are actually producing shows, except for that Quibi or whatever it is.
And, you know, there's something to be said for, you know, if you get the right showrunners and the right staff on board, then, you know, you can turn something that looks like it was going to be a monstrous failure, like the Witcher TV show, into, like, a massive success, basically on the back of, like, a good writing staff.
I remember how skeptical we all were of the Witcher show, being like, there's, the what was it like? Witch Hunter Gary?
Yeah, Witch Hunter Gary. Halloween costume.
It seems really interesting that like video game adaptations are better taken in like longer form, like television shows instead of movies.
Any story is better suited for a television show than movies. Like literally, the movie industry would be dead if like the need like. That the whole like movie theater thing, getting people to go, paying $20 to see a movie. If that stopped off like completely, there's almost no incentive to make just a short movie. Like, why would you restrict yourself to such a short? It's like, why would I write a story when I could write a novel? You know,
it'd be more of a creative endeavor. Like, I want to make this.
Yeah. And sometimes there's like, you know, different kind of formats that suit things better. Like if they'd done like the Sonic movie in like a TV show format, like it really wouldn't have had really any of the same meaning than it did before, you know?
Some stories I guess can just be told in that hour and a bit to 2 hours.
Yeah.
TV. I prefer TV shows over movies these days. I just love getting into shows.
Yeah. I would agree. I do think there is something to be said when, like, a movie can, you know, tell its story in its allotted time period. And then there's, you know, other ways to make it work. The Marvel Cinematic Universe is a really good example of how they managed to tell that long-form story, but using movies as opposed to like, a TV show. And I mean, I've never watched any of the Marvel TV shows, but they seem to be pretty hit or miss for a lot of people.
Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. Landed pretty decently with people that I talked to who watched it. My sister enjoyed it, and it like tied in. It was like it gave enough connections between the movies. Like it kind of showed what happened in those gaps where all of a sudden it's like, oh, this has happened, no, this has happened. So I think that one was well received. I know the other ones I wasn't super
John
interested
Bernthal as Punisher. That show
was good.
I love
that
so much.
That was good.
Oh my god, I forgot that show was a thing.
I really want him to come back as the Punisher in like the MCU.
he is the perfect guy for it. Some of the scenes that you've shown me are just outrageous, man. But I forgot because it's like there's Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, and Iron Fist, right? And they're the Defenders. They're TV Avengers, basically. Mm-hmm. But then the Punisher is in Daredevil, right? That's where he first shows up, and they're enemies at first, right?
Yeah.
And then he kind of gets his own show. I totally, because like that's not on my list on Netflix or anything. Is it still available on Netflix, The Punisher?
I think so.
Yeah, they're all there. They're all up. I don't think they'll ever take them down because they created them, right? They're not going
to
something they made.
They can't lose those now. It's interesting, like that Marvel had that kind of contract with Netflix, and they were homies and making shows, and they're like, actually, Disney Plus.
Yeah,
makes sense
totally.
though.
Yeah, no, it does make sense.
Way to do it.
Yeah, I think I am interested.
Oh, sorry.
You go ahead, Evan. You go ahead.
I was just gonna pull it back to like the storytelling aspect of movies and TV shows, because like you were saying how Marvel's a good example for how they can tell a long format story from movies, but that is one of the big criticisms that movies get when they don't, like, people hate it when movies just feel like they're setting up for the next movie. So it's like, you need to set up the next movie. You're trying to sell create this story, but like people really hate it when movies aren't self-contained and you can't just watch that one movie.
There's a lot of MCU
tell a satisfying story.
Yeah. There's a lot of MCU movies that are really, really guilty for that. Like Ant-Man and the Wasp, I think, is the biggest and best example, because like it like as a standard, like it's a good movie, it's funny, but like on my most recent watch, I realized that it exists only to transition between Infinity War and Endgame and set up like a vital plot point in Endgame, but it brings very little to the table on its own, and it's kind of just there to be stepped on for something greater,
It's kind of like that with, like, I really like Captain Marvel, but it's just there to set up her character and like why she's there in Endgame.
Which is too bad, because it would have been I would love to have seen more movies in her kind of timeline.
Yeah, but then she's like not even that important in Endgame. Like she has like a little scene at the beginning, and then she's there for the big fight scene at the end.
In all fairness to that, I was gonna say, in all fairness to that, I feel like that movie would not have lasted, because she is stronger than Thanos, even with the 5 Infinity Stones. So with the exception, he outsmarted her in that one scene where he took the Power Stone out and hit her with it. But besides that, like, she still, even with him having all 5, she was basically kicking his ass, right? So I don't think they would have had much of a movie if they just had her in the whole thing. They had to kind of spread her out.
Well,
Scarlet Witch could have killed Thanos too.
Oh, she was. She did have him.
Lots of people could have killed Thanos, but it's not about just pure power, right? Thanos showed in both those scenarios outsmarting them in one-to-one combat, but then also like he has his.
He was a little bitch. He was a little pussy bitch. Fire the cannons! Oh, you little pussy. He's a little bitch.
Yeah, I don't care about troops.
Like his resources as well. That's why he's so powerful. Like part of it was the fact that he was commanding an army. It's part of his power.
But if it was the comic Scarlet Witch, she could have just willed his entire army away and then just killed him like that.
No Infinity Stones needed.
So one thing, and this is kind of, I guess I feel, because kind of more on the gaming standpoint, one thing that's very interesting, and this may be more interesting to people who played the original Xbox games and Xbox 360, is that Fable's trademark got renewed by Xbox. Or by Microsoft, sorry. So there was all those rumors about another addition to the series. So I just wanted to hear what people thought about that. Like, are you guys? Did anyone here play all the Fable games? I know I played a bit of the last Fable game, but I didn't play too much before that.
I'm Jack's son.
You are, yeah. I had a son named Erik in Fable 3, so I played all through Fable 3. I thought it was good. I understand that some like legacy fans of the series didn't like it as much as the first 2 games, but I never played those. I think they're all on Game Pass, so I have considered going and playing them, but I haven't. And after Fable 3, I think they did like 1 or 2 really weird Fable games that people really, really disliked.
Like a MOBA or something?
Yeah, there was something like that. I can't quite remember what they released after that.
I know fans weren't happy with whatever they were coming out with.
No, fans did not like that stuff. But yeah, I mean, I guess if it's potentially cool, then they could have something there. I would be
down for like a classic Western RPG like that. I feel like we haven't been getting a whole lot of them lately. Yeah. So, I'd like to see a return to form, kind of.
Yeah. Hey, speaking of MOBAs that people weren't super happy about, did you guys take the opportunity to talk about Pokemon Unite last week?
We didn't, actually.
Yeah, that's something pretty interesting. Hey, Jarrod, what do you think about that?
I don't have any clue what it is.
People are pretty divided on it.
Yeah, man. So the setup was the podcast that we did after the Isle of Armor DLC came out was we were talking a bit about it because on the day that Isle of Armor came out, they did a Pokemon Presents where they they revealed a bunch of stuff like new Pokemon Snap, this and that, and then they're like, "Yo, we're gonna have another Pokemon Presents next week where we're gonna reveal our big project for the year." And so people's minds started spinning. The main speculations were like another installment in the Let's Go series, the Diamond and Pearl remakes that people are absolutely positive is going to happen. For me, I was really hoping for Colosseum and XD remakes because apparently there were whispers in the wind about it. But what it ended up being is a brand new project that was a collaboration with Tencent, and Tencent owns Riot, I believe. They're a Chinese company, to make a MOBA called Pokemon Unite. So like 5-on-5 battles.
2 lanes, I think.
Yeah, it's 2 lanes.
Yeah. I don't know
There's
what's
like
about the
one
MOBA side of it.
Oh wait, no, I did see that. I mean, I'd be interested in playing it, but it.
I'd be down to get into it if it's good. Like,
it's free to play, and it's Switch and mobile with crossplay.
For me, it would have to, in order to have longevity, it would at least have to be able to compete with Smite and League in like aspects of quality. I'm saying like quality though.
Because it's going to be dumbed down because it's because it's still Pokemon at the end of the day, so they're still shooting for that younger fan base.
Yeah,
but look at the fans, how they do the multitasking and things like Fortnite. Like there's kids that are like way younger than I am that can multitask, and like they're building and shooting some at the same time. Here's me going, all right, here's my game plan. I'm gonna build this nice tower. No one shoot me while I build this tower. I need to build this tower.
Right.
I saw.
I've seen some people say that they're kind of against it on the basis that it basically just looks like an easy cash grab or to like get a foothold for Game Freak in the Chinese market, which oddly enough, I don't think Nintendo does very well outside of Japan, like in the Asian market from what I've heard, because people from Korea who I've met are like, we don't see like Nintendo as being like a good games company or anything like that. And which is crazy to me because in North America, we fucking love Nintendo. Like, who doesn't like Nintendo, right? Like, look at Erik. He's wearing the fucking shirt.
Just a small correction. It's the Pokemon company that is like Game Freak has no involvement with that because even though Game Freak my understanding is that they are one of the primary like owners of the IP because they invented Pokemon, but they, as far as my understanding goes, they do not have any development involvement in Pokemon Unite. All of that kind of stuff is managed by the Pokemon company.
Yeah, but Game Freak would be the actual game developer for the main series games.
The main series games.
The Pokemon company acting as pretty much the publisher for those games and then making those deals with other studios to create like these spin-off games.
Right. Yeah, that's right. And the thing is with Pokemon is it's such a diverse franchise at this point that like I think they know how to appeal to very specific markets. Like think about like if you were to make like a hierarchy, think about Pokemon Smile, who that's made for versus Pokemon Cafe Mix versus something like Pokemon Unite or even the main series games, because I think what people don't really like to admit is that like the main series game are becoming more and more of a niche collection of people that are really into that shit. And like a lot of people still see the main series games as the most important thing, but you can make arguments based on how these games have been developed and received recently that maybe it's not the Pokemon company's like primary objective anymore. But like I could see Pokemon Unite really appealing to the older Pokemon crowd, and some of the stuff about it looks really clean. In one sense, it looks really bare bones, but on the other, like the character models are like really detailed and like unique, which I like a lot. So, really bland choice of characters so far, though. It's like all Gen 1 Pokemon, and then like Lucario,
Talonflame.
Talonflame is
randomly
a cool
in there.
addition. Yeah, Talonflame is cool.
It's just why, like, it's cool. It's just like, why Talonflame? That's so weird to me.
Yeah, why not?
It is unusual. It's not like they were lacking a fire and flying type Pokemon, weren't they?
You know what would create a lot of like raise the difficulty level in that game would be to have every Pokemon in the game, because then you'd have so many different matchups. Like it'd be so hard to find a meta because you'd have to go through every freaking Pokemon to find a meta in that game.
That would be
I don't know,
a
think about
nightmare.
yeah. I mean, think about how that turns out. Even if you look at like the video game championships, the competitive format for Sword and Shield, I don't actually know like the grand total of Pokemon that are available in the games now that the DLC is out, but it's somewhere in the 500 to 600 Pokemon range. But there's a wide but relatively small handful of Pokemon that are actually competitively available. When you have that many Pokemon, it's inevitable that there's going to be a handful of Pokemon in each kind of category that just outshine every other one, you know?
And that's just Pokemon. And people like straight up ban stuff, but like you look towards like League of Legends. I don't know. I mean, I don't know anything, but I'm pretty sure there's no like banned champions because they balance it all the time.
What they'll usually do for
300 champions.
What they'll usually do for competitive MOBAs is at the beginning of the round, like the beginning of the game where you're all choosing your characters, there'll be like a which character the team votes to ban that the other team can't use.
Yeah,
interesting.
Yeah, that's that aspect about MOBAs is like the whole like each team gets I think like 3 bans and then it's like pick counter pick counter pick pick. I love that.
When Evan and I lived with Ash, he was into a lot of esports and he liked watching like league finals and stuff like that. He didn't play very much league, but he enjoyed watching like the big competitors, and it was interesting seeing how like that sort of tier system exists where each competitor got to pick like I think 2 or 3 characters, and then the other team like got to ban like certain characters that the other team had picked based on their pick. So it was kind of like a little bit of strategy going into it.
Yeah.
Which I thought was pretty cool. I had no fucking clue what was going on the rest of the time when I watched it with him. But
even when we played... Oh, sorry, Evan, you go for it.
I was just questioning, like, is that built in? Because, like, you were just going to talk about Smite. Like, we never played ranked, so I don't know if that...
No, we did play a little ranked.
Oh, so did it go through that banning process when you played ranked?
Not in Smite, I don't think.
It does in like competitive, because when I was watching Smite World Championships, they would have the banning segment, but I don't know if that was just part of like custom games or...
I think it might just be like not even in the game. It's like some program that they do, and then it's just like you pick those characters going into them.
Yeah. It might be part of like the league rule set that just isn't really used in like conventional matchmaking because it's hard to implement, right? Like, it doesn't matter nearly as much.
I mean, you look at Overwatch; they used it fairly well, I'd say, with the banning. Like, you ban a attacker and defend, right? If I remember.
How long has that been a thing for?
You don't do that in Overwatch.
What
you?
game?
The only
game
type
am I
of
thinking?
Like crowd control they did.
Oh, no. You know what game I'm thinking about? Sorry, I'm thinking about Siege. They use a ban system, so you get to ban each team gets to ban an attacker and a defender. And usually it's whatever the update is. As usual, it's usually the broken character that gets banned, or there's a couple, especially when you're on attack, there's a couple attackers that are super annoying to face because there's not really a good way to counter them. So they'll usually get banned. I always found it was a good way to go about it because, I mean, it added that extra difficulty because, it was frustrating when you were the one that your character got banned that you want to play, but at the same time, like you're talking, it adds that initial bit of strategy to the game where you have to actually think, okay, is our team going to be? And this is why doing randoms all the time is hard. But if you know your team, it's like, what are we going to play, and who is the worst person to go against for what we're going to play, right? So I think that's where it adds that cool level of strategy outside of just the standard, okay, is my skill better than your skill? Or did I pick a better lane for this lane than you did, or something?
Totally. Yeah. And I do think I see the value of having something like this from like my perspective, someone who does not like MOBAs, has never had any interest in Smite or League. If it is dumbed down like they say it is, maybe it's a good jumping off point for people like me to kind of get into the genre. Because maybe if it's done well and it's cool, it could be good. But I guess we'd have to wait and see.
Well, I find a lot of those games are
easy to pick up, difficult to master.
I was gonna say a lot of these games are intimidating. Like Smite and League, if you have never played that genre of game and you're just trying to get into it, there is so much information to take in that even the tutorials they provide you do not give enough to get you into it. And not to mention, like, I played Smite when we played early on Smite. When we were getting into it, I played a bit of matches on my own, and even like in ranked, they'd say go play casual if you had a bad game, and then casual they'd be like stop playing the game and just quit this game. The same with League. Like the other day, I was playing League with Lana. I decided I had a couple hours while something was exporting, and I played League with Lana, and that game's equally as intimidating. It's very I mean, Smite came after League, I believe. So Smite basically cloned their system for theirs. But like even then, there's so many different strategies for League that are slightly different from Smite, or some of the mechanics are slightly different than Smite. It's an intimidating thing to look at. Like it's intimidating to get into. And I mean, we've played a shit ton of Smite. It's not like most of us are new to MOBAs, right? Like most of us have played a pretty intricate MOBA, but even jumping into another intricate MOBA was like a whole new kettle of fish. For
League of Legends is like the cat's meow for difficulty. Like literally just even having to click where you want to go.
I hate that.
It's so much harder just like moving a third person character around. I prefer that.
Yeah.
Like Smite was designed for a controller. That's what it is at the end of the day. Like
have any of you guys played Dota 2?
No.
I played like 3 games of it, and in my mind, it is literally not different from League in any capacity.
Well, League literally just copied Dota.
Yeah. I mean, must have done it at least a little bit better, considering it's so much bigger and well known. I don't even know what's going on with Dota 2 these days.
Now, Dota, at least I think in the Korean market, was way bigger than League. It's just we didn't really see it a whole lot, but if you ever would see like the tournaments or the world championships, Dota 2 was like the top prize pool for quite a while, at least.
Yeah.
I don't think it is anymore because Fortnite exists, but
yeah,
I think at one point it was like if you won a Dota tournament, you were rolling in money.
Set for life. Cool.
Interesting. Like ever since Fortnite came out, it kind of feels like it's like the era of the MOBA just died and was replaced
in a sense.
Battle Royale.
Well, I mean, before with MOBAs, it was like Command and Conquers, like StarCraft used to be massive. I don't think StarCraft is like as big as it was in the competitive video game scene anymore. But I could be wrong.
I still cross paths a lot with StarCraft players when I'm at work. And there's definitely still an active community of players. It's just not like nearly as big of an esport as it was before.
Yeah. I play it. I love those kind of games. I love strategy games. They're fun to me.
Yeah, I should give them a try. I've been wanting to play Halo Wars 2 for like a really long time.
Guys,
does that game have any merit as like a competitive game?
There's still more people watching it than Fortnite on Twitch.
I was gonna make a comment. I was like, I don't think League's dead in comparison to Battle Royales. No. I know way more League players than I know even Fortnite players. I mean, that's not saying much because I feel like our generation plays more League. Our generation was more around then than it was with the Fortnite grouping.
Right. But again, I think part of that is like its prevalence and popularity in the Asian marketplace, just because it's so big in like China. And when things get big over there, it doesn't really, the train doesn't slow down in a lot of ways. So I think that's kind of why some people are like, well, this is obviously just Pokemon's attempt to get a foothold in that market, which makes complete sense. And I don't doubt it for a second, but
it's also, like we pointed out before, it's a way for people who are intimidated by MOBAs to jump off into it. Much like Minecraft Dungeon was a great jumping point for a younger audience to get introduced to like the dungeon crawlers, you know? I mean, it helps the
Minecraft Dungeons is a fun
overall game. When you come out with games that are kind of easier and introduce people to a certain genre. Like it helps the genre's longevity, you know?
Which makes absolute sense as to why like Tencent's involved in there, because like obviously there's a lot in it for them if they can get like this massive Pokemon audience into MOBAs more. And like people may roll their eyes at it, people may show no interest at all, but like every Pokemon game that exists, there's going to be at least a little bit of a dedicated, concentrated fan base for it, and a lot of those people are going to end up like expanding out to other MOBAs as well. So
yeah. And I have a question for you, Matt.
Yeah,
if I may. After this announcement, and seeing kind of the pessimism that some people have for this, on how it's kind of just, you know, a cash grab into a different market for the Pokemon company, do you ever feel like a franchise that you really love, namely Pokemon, has kind of been diluted and given the Hello Kitty treatment with all the various properties and merchandise that it's given? Because don't get me wrong, I mean, the mainstay games are obviously still very popular and you still really love them, but you know, they're getting churned out at a ridiculous rate, especially stuff like Let's Go Eevee and like all the other stuff. You know, we're coming off the back of a new Pokemon Snap announcement, that Pokemon Cafe game. They're still doing the anime. They're still doing the trading card games. They're still doing there's just so much stuff. Like it's impossible to say how much, you know, Pokemon stuff is out there, especially if you're an outsider looking in like me. How does it feel?
I'm very aware of what Pokemon is becoming and the main series games kind of position in there. Like, it's fascinating to me that this massive franchise is pushed forward by every new Pokemon generation that Game Freak is responsible for producing. But you know, like when you see these games that are very, very evidently rushed, and they make decisions that anger and admittedly easily angerable and entitled and just generally bad fan base in general. I think a lot of Pokemon fans that got in it by merit of the main series games, when the main series games were their number one thing, and hate the lack of kind of love that it's getting now. Like, a lot of people want Pokemon to be what it was when we were playing like Diamond and Pearl and Black and White when we were kids, where it's all about those games and they're producing an insanely high quality product. Like, you kind of have to respect Pokemon for what it is, and I think that was like an angle of the whole like bring back the national dex situation that I don't think people realized, is like they're in a position now where they have so many Pokemon characters to work with that they can put a very select group of them in different games, and it's not like you're not getting exposed to other Pokemon that exist in other games, because like there's just that select amount that get put into different games, right? So I guess to answer your question, like as someone who loves the franchise, it's cool to see it grow and reach so many places, but I am very aware of how much of a business it is, and the fact that like the thirst for money is definitely outweighing the need to deliver like games that Pokemon fans are just truly like adoring, you know? What's your theory of it?
Is just that these games just don't stay in the pop culture. Like they release Sword and Shield comes out. The game's really big. You look at like, and I just use Twitch to try to figure out how popular games are at any given time. But like, it's gonna be at the very top of the Twitch streaming page. Like, it's the number one category, and it remains consistent like that probably for a couple weeks. But then it dies out, and then like it's still there, but it's not there anymore. And I think that's every time they release a new Pokemon game, that's what happens. It peaks and then it dies out quickly. Peaks, dies out quickly. Where like, you have all these other games. Grand Theft Auto still has 114,000.
But you have to, but that comes down to replayability. Pokemon games aren't made to be super replayable. Right? There's a single story. I mean, you can replay them and pick different Pokemon parties the whole way through, but they're not made like Grand Theft Auto. That's multiplayer. That's replayability. A lot of the games that are big on Twitch are highly replayable games. There's not a lot of games that are single. Like, here's a single story, play it, and then you're done.
And that's probably why they release so many of these games, and they're branching off on all these different things, because it's probably not for like, let's throw shit at the wall and see what sticks, but more of like, we need the Pokemon to be in the mainstream video game industry at all times. And any individual game's not going to do that. So we just need to keep releasing games to keep Pokemon in the conversation. You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
I will say, what would people, because here would be replayability. You want a Pokemon game that'll last longer. Have a Pokemon game where you can travel to different regions and face their gyms. Like, where's the game? Like, if they want to save money on remakes, because maybe it's a money thing. They're like, we don't want to keep doing remakes because we want to make new games and whatever, and we just don't know if we'll get the payback by remastering a game, because there isn't a whole lot of replayability to one. But why not have a game where you travel to a couple different regions? You don't just travel to one. I understand it's a big project, like that's a massive game project, but they have the base game. They don't have to do any new writing for it. They literally just they could literally even take the first like few generations of Pokemon and just combine them into one game. You don't even necessarily have to redo the graphics, because the nostalgia will grab people. There's lots of people that would play it for the nostalgia.
My theory, like I talk a lot about this kind of like hypothetical dream Pokemon game that I've constructed in my head, and I think one of the reasons why I'm so attached to it is because like if they made a game where they just went like far and beyond to make it the best and most replayable Pokemon game possible, and they got multiple teams involved, they got Nintendo's development team involved, they like put an insane amount of resources and like endeavored to make a really good game that answered every core Pokemon game fans' wish, they could really get the monkey off their backs, because they're constantly plagued by, think about like the fact Pokemon tweet something and there's at least 3 people that are continuously going to each and every tweet and being like, no, but you leave behind all the Pokemon, hashtag bring back the national dex. There's this really, really bad rhetoric surrounding certain elements of Pokemon, and while they're trying to expand out and reach all these new heights, they've got these people that are dragging their name because Pokemon's success is based off the core franchise, and the core franchise is being neglected according to most of the fans, right? So if they just made a game that was indefinitely replayable, just gave people things they've been wanting for years, because you're far from the first person to say like, dude, just make a game where they have all the regions, right? And like they could mix all the regions together into one giant Breath of the Wild style map, have that completely open world style that they did with the Isle of Armor, which they know works, and it's an inevitability that they're going to do that in the future, and just give the fans the game that they want, so that they stop getting freaking give me.
Well, you could easily do like okay, let's put this, so do the bunch of regions together and have a wild area or various wild areas, and have events for these various wild areas where it's like, this week this generation of Pokemon is showing up in the wild area, or this week
they do have something like that in the games currently.
So, but that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Incorporate. There's many ways you could make a Pokemon game replayable. There's so many ways. Yeah. You could even make it more of an RPG element to it, where you have more choice on what you do. Don't make it so it's just a single, like, don't make it so it's like, okay, I've premeditated that I'm going to go after these guys or stop these guys and help these guys. Like, change it up. Fuck, why not?
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I do really think they're setting up for big things, right? Like, they're making steps in that kind of direction of the game I've been thinking about. Like, in a sense, it might not seem like it, but like, you know, people expect the first RPG, Pokemon RPG for the Switch to be a fully open world thing, and it kind of was, but the open world things are the things that work. So when they make the first expansion, every aspect of the expansion and the gameplay is taking place in this open world environment. They're going to do it again for the next expansion. Like, knowing Game Freak and their kind of patterns and habits, especially when they're developing a game on a new console, like, that is absolutely the direction where the new games are going to go, and it can only get better. So I wouldn't be surprised. Maybe it's just having really high hopes, but I do think that if they're smart and they kind of know their fan base enough to know what to do, that they're building towards a huge game that can kind of quell the unrest that the fan base has, and allow them to focus on new projects. Because the thing is if they made this big game that was super replayable, it shut up all the whiny fans, gave everybody in the hardcore Pokemon community what they want, they could just literally keep doing DLC expansions for that game. Yeah, and just not have to bother making a new game for years. No. Unless when you say living in La La Land, you mean we're so far in the realm of my imagination that we don't even know the way out?
Yeah.
Cool. Well, one can dream. I'm just going to put those positive vibes into the world and hope for the best.
So one meme I saw like a while ago, it was a picture of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It had Splinter in the center, and he was Dragon Quest. And then there's like Donatello, Raphael. It was like Final Fantasy, Pokemon, and all these other JRPGs. And then it switches, and and the next one's like the Turtles all grown up, and Splinter's all old, and Dragon Quest 11's there. And then there's like Final Fantasy 15 and all this other stuff. And then there's little Donatello, still Pokemon, just a little baby still, hasn't grown up with the rest of them. Which it's kind of true. Yeah. It hasn't, as a JRPG, it hasn't adapted as much as it should, like along with the other franchises. Like if you look at Xenoblade Chronicles, like the worlds that they build, they're so elaborate and in-depth, and they still have the creatures roaming about, and it's like they should be able to achieve that level of detail, but they just chose not to.
Yeah.
And I understand that like it might have been an aesthetic choice, but they could have done better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They need to do more in like growing as a franchise, I think, for the core series.
I think that comes down to a lot of companies who become successful. They become complacent. Like a lot of the game companies anyways, a lot of them, as soon as they see success, they don't want to, they're so scared to stir away from it. I mean, you have big franchises that are like that. Fallout shit the bed because they refuse to change with the times. I mean, Pokemon has its fair share of haters because they refuse to continue to change with the times. And they're taking little steps, but not enough to, like you said, keep up with the other groups that are in the same genre. Like you need to show that want to change or want to adapt with the community as it grows. Otherwise you're just become complacent. Like that game could be cool then, this cool mechanic was introduced, but what's the next step? You can't just stay there and keep beating a dead horse.
Well, it's like battle royales.
Jack, you're muted.
Jack, you're muted.
Yeah, I just noticed that, but sorry, I was on the phone because they called me to tell me I don't have COVID. So that's
perfect. There we go.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Good to hear.
Yeah. So anyways, you also run the risk with that, where if you change too much, the fans will have such a massive backlash. So some of these developers are stuck between a rock and a hard place where it's like you have to grow to change and to become better. But if you change too much, then you're going to like lose a core system in your fan base. And that's really tough because Pokemon is stuck in that gameplay loop that they've had since day one, basically. They've made changes, aesthetically and, quality of life wise, but the current Pokemon games are not all that different from what they would have been in 96 at the end of the day from a gameplay standpoint. And if they change that, then people will be really, really upset. And I know they'll be really upset because a lot of Pokemon fans are whiny little bitch boys. And I've seen it in action because I've been a RuneScape player for over a decade. And like when they switched, like at all, like they got so much pushback from the community. And current like edition of RuneScape is so much better than it ever was, but people hate it so much that they had to go back and have legacy servers from what the game was like in 2007, and it's massive right now. Like, so many people love the old style of gameplay, and I'm like, it's so much better now than it ever was, and you guys are just reliving like a Pyrrhic victory from your childhood.
It's the story of classic Coke and New Coke, where they developed the new Coke formula, which was objectively apparently tasted better, but everyone hated it because it wasn't what they knew and loved from their childhood. So they pushed back on the formula that most taste testers were like, yeah, this tastes better.
I think necessarily me saying change might have been the wrong way anyways. I think just the improvements. Like, improve on your game style so that it can compete with other people's game styles in the same genre.
You need to be able to compete. You need to compete.
Yeah, and I think that's more so where they're losing out. Like, yes, I agree with you, Jack. When you change something too much, the fan base hates it. Like, I mean, being a Fallout fan, I didn't look how many people pushed it. I mean, Fallout 76 was just a bad game in general, but look at the pushback to such a different game than the other games. Like, the other games, they focused at the single player RPG open world go. Like, this is what we're doing. This is our story. Continue. Then they went into multiplayer because there was that whole thing where people are like, oh, I'd like to play with my friends. Even though most people said I wanted to play with my friends because they were like, I want to play with like my small group of friends, like four friends on the same world that I'm on. And they changed too much, saying, okay, everyone can play on the same world now. And I think that, you do see that pushback, but little improvements is definitely needed for that competitiveness. And I think that's where a lot of games like Pokemon are starting to lag behind, is they're not really they improve little bits here and there. Like, the animations look better for the most part than any other game in Sword and Shield. The designs are getting a little bit better. But they don't improve enough of the gameplay, enough of the mechanics to draw someone in. Like, maybe not make it, like, I think I exaggerated, because Pokemon games do have to be somewhat linear with the story, because you are supposed to be the good guy taking down the bad guys or competing in that way. But maybe make it a bit of more of a choice of how you do that, instead of being like, oh, I'm always this happy-go-lucky, positivity, like, let's do it. Like, maybe you're a bit of a dick. Like, you're still against let's use Team Rocket as an example. Say they're the enemy. You're still against them, but how you interact with them could be, instead of being like, oh, why are you guys so mean? You could be like, you guys are a bunch of dicks.
Well, it's interesting because, they kind of use the link formula when it comes to the protagonist of the games. Like, they want to make you feel like you're being imposed on the Pokemon world, so they make your character very silent and unexpressive most of the time, because your character is supposed to be it's supposed to be you existing in the world, right? And so what that ends up happening is the main character, the most important character in the story of the game, has the least amount of interaction with other characters and the least amount of personality of any other characters. It's really the other characters that carry your ability to enjoy the story, because your character is just along for the ride, much like you are. And so, if they really want to do that, they could really benefit from leaning in more on that. Like, so many people have wanted it where you can give yourself a trainer class, like be like a bug catcher or an ace trainer or something, and you have like specific requirements to maintain that class. Like, you have to use all of one type of Pokemon in your team, or you have to like battle in a certain style or something like that. Like, I think overall with the Pokemon games, it's like Pokemon delivers a gameplay experience which is completely unique to it, and in a sense it delivers a game experience that no other game can really deliver. But it's just so sad to know that the Pokemon games are perpetually not living up to their potential. You're always getting a game that is a generation behind every other game in its class that's coming out, and a lot of people just can't justify dropping the $80 for Sword and Shield, which at times looks and at times feels like a last generation title, like an Xbox 360 game, right? Like, it's just this really weird situation where people love them and are always going to keep buying them, but they're never going to be the type of games that win Game of the Year and stuff like that,
Just I was hoping Erik was. I'll hold off on my next. I have another thing I wanted to bring up in the podcast, but I need Erik here for this one because I think he might. Did anyone else play Resident Evil 7 and all that kind of stuff?
No, but I've
Not
seen
really.
people play it quite a few times. I've seen quite a few playthroughs of Resident Evil 7.
I was just going to bring up that they were talking about how the new Resident Evil Village. Oh, Eric's back. Perfect. The new Resident Evil Village is not supposed to be the eighth installment. It is not Resident Evil 8. It is a different game, really, altogether from what the Resident Evil 7 was. That's what they. I was just reading a couple articles on that, and I thought
I've seen that it also sort of is 8 though, because the way they've styled Village is like it's VIII, so it's supposed to look like 8 in Roman numerals.
This is the one that Capcom said. Capcom made a comment that it is they insist it's not supposed. It definitely isn't Resident Evil 8.
Well, okay, that's fine with me.
They said it's still a Resident Evil game. It's still set in that world, but it's not supposed to be 8. I think they're trying to keep somewhat of a story going along because I mean that's what all the Resident Evil games have been, right? You get introduced to different characters in different games. Some games have the same character, and it just kind of progresses their story. And I think they're trying to continue that through 8. And I don't know if Village is actually connected to those directly.
I assume it'll be continuing the story of Ethan, which I hope it is because he was a pretty bland character of just like a vessel for you to go through Resident Evil 7 with.
I have a feeling that it's going to be tied into Resident Evil 4 since it has that like Eastern European aesthetic that they had in Resident Evil 4, especially with like the village and stuff like that, and being like a small village, kind of like what you're stuck in a lot of the beginning parts of the 4th Resident Evil game. Which I remember we talked about this a few weeks ago because I was like, how the fuck do these games connect from a story standpoint? So maybe we'll finally find out.
So I'm going to correct what I said. I'm just reading more on the article. They say it is a sequel to Resident Evil 7. It is not considered Resident Evil 8 though. They don't want people to mistake that. It is continuing Ethan Winter's story in the village, and it might also star Chris Redfield to return to the scene of Resident Evil.
We've seen Chris in like the teaser they showed, except he looks really old and weird. He doesn't really look like Chris. But it is Chris. I don't know.
I'm super interested. It's also supposed to. They were saying it's supposed to include other things than zombies, such as werewolves, in the new one.
I've heard like werewolves, witches, and stuff, and I'm all for that. Like, bring some innovation to the series. Hell yeah!
I was gonna say they're incorporating other horror-esque creatures into a game that's basically about horror, with the exception of Resident Evil 6.
Yeah.
And they're using creatures that are, common in European folklore, like werewolves and hags. So then, I would say that I might be correct on that front.
Yeah, that
Resident Evil 7 like basically had a witch as well. Like she was a bioweapon, but the little girl that you see throughout the game has,
of course,
like witch-like abilities because of her bio shit going on with her.
Yeah, it's I'm excited for it. I need to still get Resident Evil 7 because I haven't beaten it. I had it. I played a little bit of it, but I haven't beaten it. And I'm a big fan of the Resident Evil series. I've talked to Erik a lot about Resident Evil. So I do want to get it, and I'm very excited. Like, the game looks really good, and I like that they're going back to horror. Like, they're not so much going to a shooter. They're going back to their roots of being a horror game. Like, they're, low ammo, difficult enemies. It's not just a easy cakewalk. That's why I really liked Resident Evil 2. The Resident Evil 2 remake was excellent. They brought back that whole
Resident 3 remake kind of went more for an action-y vibe, but that's also just because that's what the original Resident Evil 3 was like. It kind of had more of a action sense to it.
Yeah. Hey, so I know that Chris Redfield and Jill Valentine have existed in the same time frame, but has Leon Kennedy existed in the same time frame as those two characters?
Yeah.
Like, have they been
Resident Evil 6?
Yeah, Resident Evil 6 incorporated both of them. Well, actually, it incorporated 4 characters in Resident Evil 6 of the main Resident Evil characters.
Wesker's son or some shit.
Yeah.
No one cared about him.
Resident Evil's a cool franchise. Do you think they could put a good Resident Evil character in Smash?
Yeah.
Yeah, would they choose one of the
Mr. X.
iconic villains like Mr. X?
I think it'd be like Leon or Chris.
I could also
Player
see it
Jill
being
is really
Wesker.
cool.
I could honestly see it being Wesker too.
Yeah,
We haven't seen
I don't know.
Wesker in quite a while, so that's the only reason I wouldn't think we would, because we haven't seen him since Resident Evil 5.
You know what? You know
I think
what?
the problem.
I was gonna say super iconic.
I think
Put in the Iron Maidens. Bring the Iron Maidens back.
They could probably do a pretty interesting move set for something like Nemesis.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Nemesis is cool in
I know-
NBC.
Yeah, I know a big factor of like a character's potential to be in Smash is like moveset potential. And like in Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, you can play as Chris Redfield, but all of his moves are just like, oh, I'm pulling out a shotgun, I'm blasting you, I'm pulling out an RPG, I'm shooting you. Like he's very like bland, and like I don't think it brings a lot of character of what Resident Evil's about. But if they brought like, I think Nemesis would be a really good choice. Like, you know, it's a bit too, you know, PG-13 for Smash's taste, but like, you know, this big scary zombie character that has a lot of unique properties and just beat the snot out of people is a lot more Resident Evil speed, I think, and I think they would do a lot more favors for themselves for picking those characters, because there are they did make spirits for Resident Evil. They're like events where you can get like a lot of the main characters as spirits in the game, and that doesn't necessarily deconfirm a character's DLC potential now that we have Min Min in the game. But you know, I could definitely see them, if they did Resident Evil, picking one of the zombos instead of one of the human protagonists.
Well, it also
I'd
helps.
want Leon or Mr. X, because after Resident Evil 3, most people seem to prefer how they did Mr. X over Nemesis.
Yeah.
So
I will say
I think
that. Sorry, Eric, go for it. I'll
I was just going to say that I think the design of Mr. X was cooler with his fucking hat and his trench coat.
I was gonna say that a lot of
Yeah.
zombie characters too have their second, like after you've killed them in the first stage of a boss fight or something, they have like their second stage in that boss
Be
fight.
perfect for a final smash
Yeah.
or something.
So it'd be interesting to see, and even if you had it as a character, it's like, oh, when you do your ultimate, you temporarily turn into your second stage for a little bit, and you're just got like there's a lot of possibilities, more so for the zombies. But I agree, Leon's probably one of the most recognized names in the franchise, and then Mr. X was also really good. That's a cool story on its own.
Isn't Jill the only human protagonist that has like special powers? Like
No,
she's
she
got
He
more
has
going
special
on than-
powers later in Resident Evil 5 because Wesker puts
Yeah.
a thing on her chest.
Yeah.
Which is on the hard difficulty in that game is the hardest
It's
freaking
hard.
boss fight in the world, because they're usually
Fun, though.
It's fun. Eric and I did that one together, and it was just like we we spent quite a long time on that one.
Why do they call it Resident Evil?
Well, the first one, you were in a house,
And it's
and there's
evil.
evil in the house.
Sense. When are they going to start charging
Yeah.
these evil people rent?
Evil squatters' rights.
Wow.
On that note, we are getting to the end of our podcast here.
This is a fact that
Yeah.
Jarrod has stated.
Yeah. Does anyone want to give us the outro, or shall I do the outro?
Lead us away,
Why
my
is there
friend.
a skeleton behind you?
Because I got a skeleton for my clients. I use it for
Why is it getting
my what?
It like from the last time I remember looking at it, it's come closer to you. Do you realize that?
It's been the
Is there
same
some shit
position.
going on?
It's been the same position since I think your eyeballs are just. You should put your face closer to the screen. It usually helps with seeing how close things are.
Bobby has just been lying on the floor for the past hour and 20 minutes, slowly moving the skeleton out of frame. Just for the
She's not here today, but we were actually, Eric and I made a joke when I first moved him there, that I was gonna put him in the chair and then put the blanket around it and be like, and then wait for someone to make a comment and be like, oh Matt, look, Bobby's still in the blanket. That's her back there. Just after your whole thing where you moved your face and super close to the screen to see, who is that?
Jerry killed his girlfriend. She's
Like,
already
Bobby.
a skeleton.
But yeah, that's my teaching skeleton. I use it for my clients at the clinic, and when I get them to come here instead of the clinic.
This is my
learning.
teaching Kylo Ren.
Yeah.
I
This
see.
is my teaching pen.
Because it's also Mark Hamill, you see? Like the
Oh, I didn't realize
Oh
that.
God, it is Mark Hamill. Holy
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us this Sunday morning for the 56th LC podcast. We stream 5 days a week. We're a variety channel. We stream next on Monday with Erik and Peter, and then Tuesday, and then Thursday, Friday, and Sunday again. So we'll see you then. We also have a new video coming out Wednesday, so check that out. And if you like our streams, check out some of the stream highlights that are on our channel. We post little snippets from the best moments in our various streams that you can watch if you're not into necessarily watching the full 3-hour streams. So thanks for watching. Hope you guys have a good rest of your Sunday. Bye.
Bye, guys.